Hey, welcome back to Getting Rich Together. I'm your host, Shama Bunton. And ladies, today I'm inviting you to something big. I'm inviting you to a movement. We just wrapped a sold-out, unforgettable gathering in San Francisco. 140 women, 11 bold conversations on stage, and over 800 connections sparked. We were featured in Fox News, NBC, and with this movement, we all felt it. We are building something real. And now, it's New York City's turn. On May 13th, we're coming together at the MasterCard HQ in the heart of Manhattan for the next Wealth Catalyst Summit. This is where women come to preserve, build, and invest wealth, not alone, but in community, in it together. And here's what sets us apart. You won't just sit and listen. You'll be curated and matched intentionally with other women who share your ambitions. Our peer matchmaking connects you based on what you're building, learning, and investing in. Walk in with questions and walk out with collaborators. You'll hear from women who are doing the work, buying businesses, raising capital, investing in real estate, collecting art, backing Broadway, and so much more. Come to be inspired, come to be matched, and come to get ready to move your capital. Tickets are on sale now at wealthcatalystsummit.com. Claim your seat in the room where women rise together. And now, let's get on to today's episode. Welcome to Getting Rich Together, the show for successful women who are looking to take their financial futures to the next level. I'm your host, Shama Bunton. When I started my wealth building journey, nobody knocked on my door to give me all the answers. So I want to talk to the experts who've done it and bring the answers to you so we can discover the right opportunities that will help us achieve the financial futures we've always dreamed of, together, and have fun doing it. So let's dive into this episode and start getting rich together. Today, I am with the brilliant Liz Faircloth. Liz, everyone knows you as being the co-founder of the Real Estate InvestHER. You are producing an incredible investor conference coming up in June, all with women talking about investing in real estate, which is so sexy and so powerful. You've also got InvestHER Plus, which I think is an incredible platform for women to get together across the country to learn and connect about investing in real estate. And of course, the Real Estate InvestHER podcast. Liz, you are everywhere when it comes to women building wealth, achieving financial freedom through real estate. You've been at this almost 8 years with InvestHER, but you've also been building your real estate portfolio for so many years with your husband, focus on owning and managing residential and commercial properties. I'm so excited to have you here today on Getting Rich Together. Thank you for being here.
Oh my God, I'm so excited to be here. Thank you for having me.
You are such a light. The first moment I met you, I was like, who is this powerhouse woman who is both kind and brilliant and also has just developed such incredible strategy around business and real estate and financial freedom. And while we will get to all of those accomplishments and all those incredible things, we are going to start with a young Liz. We're going to start with a young girl, maybe in pigtails, between the ages of, let's say, 7 to 10 years old. Liz, where were you? Where were you living? And more importantly, what were the money stories around you?
Ooh, well, I didn't have pigtails. I had this awful bowl cut, which probably in the mid 80s was very in. I don't know that. So I'll just say that I had literally, if you put a bowl on my head, cut around it, that's what I looked like. So
thanks,
just
Mom.
To give everybody a nice visual for those that are in their mid 40s as well, you could totally appreciate what I'm saying. So I was living in New Jersey. I'm the youngest of 3. So I'm a Jersey girl. I could speak very quickly and fast. I was raised in a middle-class family. My dad was a school teacher. He was a special ed teacher for many years, and my mom worked part-time. So I grew up in a family that the luxuries and going out to dinner and like the extras were special, really special. We were told they were special as well. I have memories of going on vacation and grabbing extra food at the buffet because my dad's like, hey, we could have lunch as well. So get a bagel, put some peanut butter on it. And so those kinds of things were very ingrained in me. So the money stories are interesting. The harder you work, the luckier you get. Very hardworking family. So that is ingrained in me in terms of work ethic and working hard for your money, not so much money working hard for you.
When you were growing up, or as you found yourself, let's say in high school, were you inclined to go get that part-time job and try to hustle hard to make money? Were you focused on your studies and you're like, this is the pathway forward? How did you start to embody, I guess, developing into your young self?
Yeah, I was someone who, as soon as I could start working, I did. And I liked hustling. I was a hustler. So I wouldn't be like, oh, I don't want to work or do anything. I wasn't lazy. Lazy is definitely not something anyone's ever called me. Yeah, but that does come at a cost, right? Of just putting your head down and getting things done. I could remember having various jobs simultaneously and just not always taking a break, or I always need to be in motion as well. Playing sports, working for the money I had was always top of mind. I was very serious in college as well. Like I became student government president, and my parents were able to save on tuition and room and board because I got a stipend for this role in college, which I was super appreciative of. I actually saved my parents like $15,000. And I was working as well along the way. So I was always working, if you will, and keeping my studies up. But I was a little too serious in college. So I've actually had more fun now as I've gotten older, but that's okay. That shaped me. And
well, as you were thinking about university, I guess, was it in the back of your mind at all in terms of real estate, or had you had exposure into real estate at all as you were in high school or going through those college years?
I did not. I didn't grow up in a family of entrepreneurs or real estate investor moguls or anything. My brother-in-law, it was actually in graduate school. I was going to school to be a social worker. I wanted to help people. I still help people, but I was going to get my master's degree in social work. And my brother-in-law handed me Rich Dad, Poor Dad and said, read this book. So I said, okay, this has nothing to do with what I'm learning, but I'll read it because I liked personal growth books. I had read a couple of different personal development books at that point in my early 20s. And that book really shifted my perspective. So that was like my introduction to anything besides working hard and service, like serving people, helping people, working hard, and having a strong work ethic were definitely things ingrained in me, but not so much the money working hard for you, creating a business or investments to work for you, right? To work hard for you and build wealth. So that was my introduction to real estate investing, if you will, because Kiyosaki obviously talks a lot about that in the book, passive income and things of that sort.
That's so interesting. And at that time, so obviously social work is a really different calling, right? It's like a different calling of the heart. It's like a desire to really help people. And you've certainly been able to help people in lots of other ways. But as you were starting off your career out of university, real estate, were you like, okay, I'm going to save money now and go buy my first property? What was life like for you as you graduated university and started to navigate the real world?
Yeah, the real world, I didn't have a taste of the real world until we started moving towards buying our first investment property. Because I went from undergrad to graduate. And in that graduate school experience was when I started reading. I read Rich Dad, Poor Dad. And then I met my now husband. So we started dating. And we were an hour and a half apart. So most of the time we got together, we were going to real estate investing RIA meetings and educational events. I know. It's like really, really, really great thing for young 20-something-year-olds to do. We didn't go to the bar. We went to the workshops. And these were like when the old school, you got binders. I mean, this is 2004, right? This is a long time ago. Long story short, though, that then gave me the confidence to start thinking about investing. We didn't have the money to invest. As I said, my parents didn't make a ton of money in like big corporate jobs, but they were very good at saving money. That is something I got from my parents. And they definitely lived within their means. Always. That is something I got from my parents too. So we were going to need a loan from someone to buy a property. My husband's parents didn't have it. So I said, I didn't think my parents did. And I was talking to my father and he said, Grandma left some money to me, my grandma, his mom. She had passed away recently when we were talking. And he said, we want to make an investment. We'll make an investment in your property. Now, meanwhile, this is me and my husband. It would have been our first property, right? We're in our young 20s, didn't know much, just took some courses at the local RIA. And my father, who's a pretty shrewd guy, pretty smart guy, Sal Randazzi from Brooklyn, was like, yeah, we'll make the investment of $30,000 with you and your soon-to-be husband. So I was like, great. At the
a lot
now
of
as a
confidence
parent,
on both, right? A lot of
correct. At the time, I'm like, awesome. Now as a parent myself, I'm like, would I have done that? I don't know about that. But put that aside, he invested in me and my now husband, and that gave us our start. The $30,000 went to down money. We bought a duplex right outside of Philadelphia, and it was a row home. So if anyone's familiar with that area, all duplexes or any property is older homes and everything right outside of Philly. And we bought two units at the time, and $15,000 went to the down payment and $15,000 went to renovations. So that got our start in the investment world. And we didn't know anything, figuring it out, but we made it through, and we were able to then do a 1031 exchange, which means pretty much deferring taxes legally. By when you sell a property, you then put your gain, if you will, into the next property. So we did that and bought our next property in New Jersey, and that really then started
How many
to
years
snowball.
after? When did you do that?
We did that. We owned the property about a year, so it was very quick. Usually, you don't own property that quick and then sell it. But we wanted to live in New Jersey. My then boyfriend, now husband, was living in Philadelphia or outside of Philly. So we said, we don't want to really build our portfolio here. We want to do it in New Jersey. And so that's what we decided to focus on. In hindsight, we could have kept it and still figured it out. But we were just like, no, we have to be 5 minutes from every property we own. We were very locally focused at the time, which we've evolved. But hey, everyone starts somewhere. And we got our start in being landlords, which I know a lot of people that are in the real estate investment world do become landlords and start to how do I navigate this? And that's a whole process in of itself. But we had to evict someone on our first property. So we got our teeth. What's the word? We were able to get a lot of experience, something like that. We got a lot of experience on our first one.
So Liz, at that time when you're very young, right? Getting into real estate, starting to purchase property, was this sort of your full-time gig? Was this the thing you were focused on the most? And had you and your husband decided this is where we want to build both of our careers? How did you navigate this big career decision so early on in your life? And also make sure and this relationship that you guys were tracking to the same page as far as what your goals were?
Yeah, it's a great question. And that was the thing that I've always, listen, there's some days I want to strangle my husband, to be honest with you. I've been married almost 20 years, but I love him dearly. And I think the thing that we always had in common was on our first date, we talked about where we wanted to be in 20 years, where we wanted to be in 10 years. And we had this similar sort of passions and similar values. And we both wanted to impact the world. I remember the conversation. It was one of our first dinners. And we're chatting about really wanted to have an impact in this world on some level with people. And we both had this shared value set versus just wanting to create, I want to get a job and you want to get a job, let's have a family. That wasn't the conversation. It was more of this more from an impact and a purpose perspective. And I was like, okay, this is somebody I want to spend more time with. And that was one of the first things that I remember with him. And so we always had this similar type of where we want to be, what we want to be doing. And we figured that out early on. So when we started to say, okay, let's get married and move forward in that, I was at the time, I decided not to get a social work job per se. And one of the things in Rich Dad Poor Dad says, if you're going to build a business, you need to know how to sell. So go learn how to sell. If you're going to learn any skill, above everything else, you need to learn how to influence people and sell. So I said, okay, let me do that instead of social work. I love helping people, but I don't know if that's my trajectory. So here I am, got my master's degree. Everybody's getting licensed, opening practices. And I'm like, go get a sales job, which is totally the only person I think in my whole class that ended up not doing anything social work. But I got a sales job in selling pretty much consulting services to companies on how teams can work better together, like management consulting. So it's actually selling something that actually was helping companies and helping people. And I became a consultant myself. So it was a sales consultant role. So that's what I was doing. My husband said, you know what? You do that And what I'll do is I'll quit my job. So within the first week of us getting married, like 2 weeks after getting married, he quits his job, which he had much higher income than I did at the time. He had a company car. He worked as an engineer. And he's, I'm done with this. Let's really build our business. Meanwhile, we had like 2 rentals, not enough to like really live on at all. And that was what we decided to do. When we lived below our means, we said, let's pick a house that it was a townhome in central New Jersey that we totally could afford if he made no money and we were living off what I was making. And that's how we got our start. We didn't do what most people did. And then 8 years later, I started a family. So for the first 8 years, our businesses and our real estate and making it work was really our focus.
That's so fascinating. And tell me a little bit about your friend group. Obviously you're mentioning you were, attending these conferences and really sort of getting into spaces that I don't think were really popularized at the time for young people. I imagine that your own just personal life experiences therefore ended up being a little bit more unusual.
It was unusual because then once my husband quit his job, a few years later ended up quitting my job. That's a whole other great story. And I ended up going back to that job because it didn't work out and we were really, really strapped for cash. But that's another story. So friend groups and entrepreneurial real estate investing was sparse, right? Most of my friends from high school or college were getting jobs and starting their careers. And I was doing that, but I was doing it kind of holistically with my husband so that we could build a business together and an investment strategy. And, we're in our 20s, right? So I'm not this, now I think about it, and I would have done so many things differently. But in my 20s, I'm so naive. We were so naive. We're both like these very optimistic, extroverted people. And we just kind of, we just went for it in a way that I don't know if I would now in my 40s. But I'm so grateful for that being naive at that time because it almost sheltered us a little bit of really what could go wrong. So friend group is tough though. I was so appreciative when I met Andressa, my now business partner, because I didn't know a whole lot of other women doing this type of work and investing. And when we were looking to expand our portfolio in another area, we were in New Jersey and we wanted to go back to Philly. That's when I met Andressa and became really good friends with her. And like, where do you find other women that are investing, that are investing, that want to talk about more than just the common conversations that quote unquote women want to quote unquote talk about? And that was harder. And that's, I think, one of our passions of why we wanted to launch InvestHER, because we wanted other women just like ourselves at the time. Now we're building this for all kinds of women who want to be passive, active. But yeah, it's you have to seek it out. And I think that's why women love our community, because it's not your neighbors, it's not your friends that you grew up with. I was so excited. I got a HELOC on my property and we're investing that in a deal we're doing. And I was just going off on telling my neighbor this. I don't even know why. I think I was just excited. I didn't talk to anyone during the day. So I saw her at the bus stop and I just started telling her about the HELOC. She looked at me. She's like, yeah, what are you doing this weekend? And I was just like, oh yeah. And then it dawned on me, like, oh yeah, this is not someone in my community. She has no care for what I'm saying. And she wasn't mean, but she was like, yeah, so it's just so funny. I was like, that's right. I'm not talking to a woman at a conference. I'm literally talking to my neighbor. She's looking at me like 15 heads. So you, as an adult, you have to seek those communities out. You have to work a little harder. But I do believe there's a lot of people who want that in their lives. They just don't know who to go to and how to talk to people about it.
Absolutely. And obviously, your journey has been expansive and you've alluded now to a couple highs and lows. And obviously, we know that wealth building is a nonlinear journey. Life is wild. Can you walk me through just some of the key moments, let's say pre-launching InvestHER and pre-launching the community, in terms of some of the big challenges or things or moments where you really had to take a deep breath and go, all right, we're going for it. And I don't know what's going to happen. How did you manage through some of those moments and what did they look like?
Yeah, there was a lot of moments. And I think one of the earlier ones was when I did quit my job. So it was 2000, just to give the landscape, right? It was 2008. At that point, we had about 30 rentals. And they were quite leveraged rentals, I'll say. Because again, not all assets are created equal, right? You can have a free and clear asset. You can have a very leveraged, over leveraged asset. So as your listeners know, right? We all know that. Didn't know that at the time, but I know that now. So at the time we had 30 rentals, but they were quite leveraged. So they weren't like these cash cows by any means. We were still trying to stabilize and increase rents and make improvements and work within the means that we had. And we had borrowed money from both of our parents, not from them directly, but from from their homes. So they did HELOCs, which is basically a home equity line of credit, and we borrowed against their homes. So we were able to, in essence, have lines of credit to make some purchases, investments with them. So we said we were growing our business, and my husband said, wow, if you quit your job and we live off savings for a year, we will accelerate this business in a way that we can't do if you keep doing what you're doing. I said, you're absolutely right. We had no sort of plan of, okay, how are we going to replace my income? We're just like, we have savings, and worst comes to worst, we'll both get jobs. We both could figure it out. We were always like that. We're like, oh, we'll figure it out. We'll figure it out. So I quit my job, and literally a month later, the market crashes, right? 2008, we all could know what happened then. Whether you had property at the time or not, we know what happened. And we had just bought a commercial building. This is a 10,000 square foot building in the middle of Trenton, New Jersey. Now, for those who are not familiar with Trenton, New Jersey, it's a city and a capital in the great state of New Jersey. It's still figuring itself out. A lot of people, and it was heightened in the 50s. Everyone was there. And then sprawl happened, suburban sprawl. Everyone left the city. Obviously, there's a lot of government workers and people that work for the city there. But in terms of people wanting to live there and urban redevelopment, still figuring itself out. So we have this 10,000 square foot building and no tenants in sight. At the time, you could buy assets like that with no sort of development plan. We used a line of credit to do this. And we're like, we have a vacant building, and the market just crashed. And then we had a number of properties that were going to sell, but now we had to convert to rentals because of the way the market was. And I just quit my job, right? So it was a little intense. It was a little intense. I mean, I remember my husband's, and we were working together, and we didn't have the tools we have today.
And you were young. I mean, you must have been young, in your early 30s or 30. I mean,
I don't even know if I was 30. Yeah. I was 30 at the time. I think I was 30. And I remember my husband turning to me as if we don't change something, we're going to get a divorce. This will cause us to leave each other. No question. I said, you're absolutely right. And we're when we're together, we enjoy each other's company. We always have in a lot of ways. We have fun together. I said, this is intense. So financially, emotionally, and every way around it was really tight and stressful. So I think the moment that I started to learn, do what's in front of you to do. You can think about where you want to be in 10 years and do vision planning, and all of that's great. But when you're in times like that, you have to literally do what's in front of you to do to move the needle forward to get you to where you want to go. So what was in front of us to do was we had a vacant building that we needed to have a plan to bring in income and reduce expenses, right? So that's what we did. That was in front of us to do. And I remember working really hard with my husband, rallying around this building that quite honestly was hard to find one tenant. So we ended up finding small tenants. And that was right at the beginning of shared space and people using an office and using the meeting space. It was we were before our time, if you will, because that wasn't really a thing, but we knew that was the only way we were going to get people in the building. So that's what we did. And so slowly we stabilized that asset. And that was the first moment of, it could be bad, but if you start to put a plan in place and work really hard towards it, you could get to where you want to go. It wasn't easy. So after, I think, a year of just making that work, we started to stabilize the asset. And then we went on to the next thing. We were always sort of I don't want to say struggling, but it was always we're all over the place. And so when we leaned into multifamily as our asset of class of choice, okay, what are we really good at?
How did you come to that decision? How did you decide of the asset classes that you could be pursuing within real estate that multifamily was the one?
We looked at our portfolio, and even if you don't have a portfolio, look at all the activities that you have and say, okay, where am I having some wins? What actually is working? Because what we often do is we look at what's not working. And I don't think across the board, everything in someone's business is not working. Everything in someone's portfolio is not working. I don't think that's the case, but that's where we end up going. So I remember the conversation with my husband. I said, we're doing a land deal. We have this commercial building that we've just worked our ASS off to get tenants in. But where are we having some success? And what does that success look like? And we started to look at our multifamily properties that we were dilapidated, we renovated, we stabilized, and we got tenants in and we were managing. And that was working from a cash flow perspective. We had the team we were building. So from a resources perspective, from a financial perspective, and all the other activities we were doing, we were struggling, right? The commercial building, the random land deal that we were involved in that made no sense. I think that's where you could start to say, what do I need to let go of? And then what do I need to lean into? So that's what we started to do more of. And that's when we started raising money and seeing, okay, what can we do with other people from a lender perspective, from a syndication perspective? And then we also started to go outside of Trenton. So at the time, market is very, very important in real estate, right? It's all market. I always say it's like market first, then the deal. And so what we found was we said, okay, if we want to go all in on multifamily, can we do it in just this market? And so as we've seen, right, New Jersey's gotten more expensive, taxes, I could keep going. So we started to get a little more, okay, let's go a little more outside of New Jersey. So we bought an 18 unit in Philadelphia. And that was like, okay, that at the time was even more money we've ever raised for a project. And then we just started slowly scaling our multifamily business over the years, doing more of that outside of New Jersey. And now we have a couple thousand units with obviously a lot of investors. But just it goes to show you that it's very interesting when you start to lean into what's working and then say, okay, this isn't as much of a risk because we're just tweaking it. 18, 49. It wasn't like this. Because when you shift gears like asset class, market, strategy, it's a learning curve. We all know that. So it's like, how do I mitigate my risk? And how do I do it in a way that I have a business to support it? And so that's really how we were able to scale that one focus and let the rest go. We just sold
amazing.
That commercial building. We actually made money with it. Funny enough, 15 years later, we actually made money with it and never made money with it over the 15 years. But I think that's a great story in the sense of just leaning into what you're great at, what you have built that is creating success. And then, okay, how do I let go of the rest?
I think that's beautiful. You mentioned team very briefly, and I wanted to double click on sort of the people around you. Obviously we hear so many stories of, I worked with this GC, or I hired this person or this contractor, and these resources and tools. And obviously now it seems like you've got a pretty well-oiled bench, but I'd love to hear a little bit about what it was like to create the team and to sort of go through that learning curve of figuring out who you need, when you need them, and what it's like to sort of have something that feels like a more well-oiled machine.
Yeah. And it's funny, right? Because I think there's I don't want to say a superficial answer to that. And then there's a deeper answer. So I'm going to give you like the strategic, tactical answer. And then I'm going to share the deeper one because I think they're both important here. So just on the surface, right? I think building team, you can't be great at everything. You can't be exceptional at everything, especially in real estate. You're finding the deal, you're underwriting the deal, you're managing the deal, you're raising the money. There's so many elements of it that take so many different personalities, so many different sort of like expertise. Real estate investing on one hand is a super task-oriented, high operationally focused business that's analytical and technical. And then on the other side of it, if you're raising money and finding deals and bringing people together, it's a high relationship, highly extroverted, highly risk-taking, at times, visionary business. So these two, like visionary and integrator, or operational and on the front end of the business, types of like personalities or roles are both needed to manage and then grow a portfolio. And it's really hard. Most people are not usually exceptional at both of them. If you're amazing on the ops side, you're not like Miss Relationship person. And if you're really good at relationship building and connecting with people, your managing project side is probably not the best. We were doing it all. And I think our biggest strategic move was when we really said, what can we lean into and where do we need to bring partners on or team members? We were more on the partner side. So we started partnering with a lot of different people. And when we partnered with a person who helped analyze a larger multifamily, that was such a great step forward because he really started, he was local to the building. It's a 49 unit. We're actually considering selling it now. But he was, and he's a cousin of my husband's, had the right personality, he was a real estate investor, 10 minutes from the property. We were 2 hours from the property. And he was able to analyze it and manage it in a way that we couldn't, not because we weren't local, but we also just we're not amazing managers of things. I don't know how else to say that. You have to manage timeline, budget, detail. That takes a certain person, usually a really good operations person. So that was like, oh, wow, we could start really building with other people and partners doing what we're great at. And obviously where are the gaps? And then partnerships didn't work out. You outgrow each other. There were certain partners we bought buildings with that we ended up working out and then you outgrow. So now so I think the biggest thing is knowing thyself, knowing really where you need to lean into, your skills, your experience, what lights you up, what you're great at without working too hard. Like, what are you great at? Just being who you are versus like, after 8 hours, I'm really good at this. Well, that's not really something you're exceptional at, in my opinion. It's usually something that I used to say your core genius. And then figuring out what the business needs, knowing your core genius and then where there's a gap to get you where you want to go. And that could be a contractor, that could be a hired person, that could be a partner. You could fill that in a lot of different ways. When we didn't have a ton of cash to be paying people, like in terms of employees, we partnered with people. We gave away equity. That's how we grew our business. In hindsight, that has pluses and minuses. You can't just fire your partners.
No.
So that's a whole other level of complication, to be honest, now that I know what I know. However, at the time, that was easier for us to give away, right? Equity versus paying someone a generous salary. The deeper part of it is that we teach people how to treat us. And so I can remember the contractor that I'm working with now. My husband and I are doing a local project right now. We're doing a ground up construction project right in our community, which is our first in our actual place we live. So it's kind of fun and a little nerve wracking, everything that's going on right now. But I'm like, we conservatively underwrote this. This is going to be a great project. The contractor we have now, like literally right now at the time of recording, versus the contractors we used to have in Trenton that stole from us, that lied, literally stole from us, lied to us. There was times that I was nervous to even be in their presence because from a safety perspective, I mean, that level of uncomfortableness to now where I just want to hug my contractor that, he's great. He's exactly what we need for this project. That's a 15-year span, right? I don't think people do enough work on themselves. What do I stand for? What am I teaching people to how to treat me here? And what I'm going to allow and not allow. And I think my husband and I did not do a great job, I could just say for myself, of not expressing what we allow and don't allow. Like, what are our expectations? What's not working? What needs to change? We just went along with the flow a little too much. And we allowed for sometimes team members to keep doing what they're doing because we allowed it under our watch. And I think that's the responsibility we need to take as stewards of our wealth and stewards of our business, stewards of our lives. Like we teach people how to treat us. And if something's off, we're responsible for mentioning it and realigning versus, wow, I just have this revolving door of partners. Well, yeah, you're also not speaking up. I'm not saying we all attract every single person, but we do in some ways.
Yeah,
I didn't know that having those difficult or realignment conversations at the time, I just was like, oh, this is a bad contractor in a bad market versus what I know now, right? And having those difficult conversations or those realignment conversations. We don't stand for this. Like we're elevating here. And I think that's the work to do.
Yeah, that's so important. My husband and I often talk about what are our values and are the people values aligned with us? And I think it just really comes down to, at the end of the day, it doesn't matter how smart you are, how connected you are. If our values aren't the same, it's just not going to work, And I think that that's so valuable. So at what point did you sit down with your husband and say, okay, we've now built this incredible portfolio. There's still evolving. There's a massive trajectory ahead. And now you're going to add on being the co-founder of another company. Liz, already with everything you've said so far, You sound very busy. You're a mom, you got a family, you are doing all the things. And then you added on another responsibility, really with intention to pay things forward. And so what had happened to click for you that your mission here was not just to be a totally fabulous and brilliant real estate empress, but to also take it forward and to help lead people through financial freedom through real estate?
I remember the moment very distinctly. And it was right when I had my son. My son is now 11. And I just left my job, same job, twice. And the second time I left my job, I was in a much better position than I did when I, shared earlier about my 2008 debacle. So at that time, it was 2013, and I just had Zach. And I remember I left my work. We were starting to build our passive income. We had enough coming in to allow for that from our real estate. And I remember being home, and I wanted a son, and we wanted a family, and everything was moving along really well. And I remember being home with him, and he was like a month old. And the plan was for me to be home with him and get back into our business, me and my husband's business, and grow the business with him. And I remember the moment, and I'm like, I'm not happy. Like I have this healthy baby. I have this great marriage. Our business is finally producing money and rewards that I've been working so hard for over the course of many years. And I felt very alone. I felt very empty, to be honest. And after reconciling all of that and figuring out, okay, why do I feel so empty? I realized I loved real estate, but it wasn't like this. I wasn't helping people from the perspective of teaching and sharing and the values that I have. I love the idea of inspiring other people and helping people, and also seeing people do the same thing, right? In taking that step and building a portfolio and living life on their own terms and all the things that me and my husband, right, had done. And right around the same times I met my now partner, Andressa. We became very good friends. I remember sharing this with her. She said, what if we started something together, like a free group, and we brought some women together and supported each other, like a mastermind? I'm like, yeah, I need that. I need that too, as we're growing our own businesses. And that really was like this light that popped in of, okay, and this was before InvestHER, before we even talked about building a community together to support women in their growth of investing. But I remember doing this group. It's like on Skype too. It wasn't even on Zoom. That's how much I'm dating myself. But regardless, we were doing it and doing this mastermind and all helping each other and giving each other advice, getting advice. And that really lit me up. And it kind of got me out of my little pity party of just why aren't I really happy? And so that my joy and my happiness of helping other women and helping myself get through this, being home with a newborn, going through all the hormonal changes, right? That was certainly contributing, was really, really like an enlightenment for me. And that then led me and Andressa starting to partner on deals together, which I only had partnered with my husband, of course. So that was my first partner that I was really leading. And then that led us to more conversations about events. We go to events and go to a conference, and we'd be the only women there besides this little group we had formed. We said, we got to change this. What if we created a community that women had a safe space that they can grow themselves, grow their businesses, grow their wealth together? And so that kind of launched InvestHER. But InvestHER did a lot for me more than as well as me doing it for other people. Do you know what I'm saying? Because I was really at a point where I was trying to figure out where my joy and where I could be purposeful in life. So I had felt like we had done that. We were there already with one business. I didn't feel like I was, doing it in other places.
I love that. I feel similarly about building the rooms you want to be in. If it's not there, you can't find it. You get the ping from the universe, you go build it. And that's powerful. Give me a little peek inside of your upcoming conference. I think it's so powerful to bring women together to talk about specific topics that, quite frankly, there aren't a lot of spaces for. And to be able to do so in a fun space, to be able to have fun together and to learn and share. Give me a little peek behind the scenes. What can people expect when they attend?
Yeah, absolutely. So InvestorCon's June 1st to 3rd. And Andressa and I literally took everything we hated about conferences and said, if we have a conference, what will we do? So this will be our 4th in-person conference. And it's 3 days, 25 speakers, all women. And what's really special about it is that it feels like a large retreat versus like a stale conference. And what I mean by that is that every session is like a hands-on workshop. They have a workbook. What are they building towards? It's very mindful. It's very intentional. Every single exercise speaker is intentional with the goal of women growing their portfolios, real estate portfolios, growing their business, because it is a business, not just a property, and then growing themselves. So we even do a mastermind on stage, a live mastermind where a woman comes up, shares an issue that she's struggling with, and we process it with her in front of everyone. And usually when you're talking in that sense, again, you're going through like the strategy of, okay, you're challenged with finding deals. Okay, we could solve that. Let's figure that out. But let's go a little underneath here. What's really coming up for you? My social work training of what's coming up for you and is really her and I, we want to go deep with women because that's really the growth happens so women can live life on their own terms. And I don't think every conference is doing that. They stay a little more superficial. They stay tactical and you can learn all the strategies, but we want to talk about things that you can't Google and you can't just get from random places. This is very curated. So the women attending, the women speaking, the companies that are there have been handpicked to really serve the women that are there. A lot of the women there are doing deals. They have properties. If they're new, they're a little more serious, right? They're a little more, they have the money or the wherewithal or okay, I want to invest in myself so I can build a network. My favorite session is this deal or no deal session where women actually get a real deal to analyze together in their tables because they sit in tables. And then they go on the mic. Why would you do this deal? How would you do this deal? What are the pros? What are the cons? And the woman leading that, her specialty is new construction. So she's done a tremendous amount of new construction. And again, it's all different asset classes and strategies, but typically all around real estate. So yeah,
So
sessions
exciting.
are core real estate, business, and self-care, all the three.
Oh my gosh, I love that, Liz. And for those who can't make it to the conference, how else can folks sort of start to learn more together when it comes to real estate?
Yeah, it all comes down to your network. And we are not here to say, hey, you need to be doing this or do that. This is about connecting with the right people based on your goals and based on where you are in your journey, right? Because everyone's journey is a little different. So we just launched this year InvestHER Plus, which is a membership-based platform. It's like a 30-day trial. And if you do join, it's less than a couple $100 a year. It's very, very reasonable. But the whole goal of the platform is to really help women efficiently network with each other across the country. So if you live in California and you invest in St. Louis or wherever, there's women all around the country and other parts that are even internationally, right? Women are investing in Portugal or wherever they're doing. It's a way to meet people, network with each other, but a very like efficient, curated way versus random and, are you going to help me? And, it's like women don't have time for random networking.
Yeah, exactly.
I don't know how to say that. I don't have time for that. I need efficiency. And then I'm like, okay, let's develop something and figure it out. The whole goal of it is that there's active and passive women on the platform. So ultimately, passive women that don't want to buy a property but want to invest with other women operators, they'll be able to source opportunities. And then the women who are active can also not just find the money, but find the support, relationships, et cetera, et cetera. So that is what we're building, and that's what we've built. And we're excited to also have that as that ongoing platform for women, in addition to like the in-person things we're doing.
I love that. Congratulations, Liz. Like, it's so incredible to have an organization like yours around that's providing such community and knowledge and service around something really specific and something that women are often, once again, not invited to the table at mostly. So congratulations. I've got a couple last questions. One of my favorites is around thinking about legacy. You're currently building now not only the business with your husband, you have a new business that you've now had for about 8 years, so not so new, but continuing to grow and taking steam. If you were to look back, let's say at a young age of 102, my lovely Liz, what is the body of work that you think is still left to be produced on this planet? What more is there for you?
So what do I want to see for myself at 102?
Yeah.
I think legacy, again, I can look at it on one level and say, okay, the legacy is the wealth, the money, the properties that you pass on, right, to the next generation. I don't think that really excites me, though, to be honest. I think what really excites me to think about legacy is seeing the kind of like fruits of the work that you've done in what you've left. So my kids, right? So like I would want, what would really warm my heart is that they don't have to have the same business or the same, what my husband and I are doing, but contributing to the world to make the world a better place and doing something bigger than themselves. That would be really important to me to see. That would be huge from a legacy perspective. How do they navigate challenges? How do they navigate issues? What kind of people are they? That's important for me in terms of legacy. I think the other part of the professional sense is then seeing an impact that you've made. And it's not about the numbers or to me necessarily. It's about the impact you're making to the people you're serving. And how far does that go? And so I see women getting the confidence to buy their next property or turn a flip that's losing money into something that's making them money so that they could go on a vacation with their family and spend quality time with their kids. And like, we see women who are in abusive relationships that quite honestly is in the relationship because financially they have to be. And they're able to break away because they're in a toxic relationship. That's a really big deal. And that motivates me to keep doing what I'm doing, to be honest with you, and get through the challenges and whatever we navigate. But to see that kind of impact as a 100-year-old and to see how that's impacted families, like that would be great.
Ripple effects in ways you may not even know.
Ripple effects in ways I don't even know.
The power of which doing. My second to last question, Liz, is we've talked a lot about investing and savings and all the things to do with our money to preserve it and build it. But there's also fun things we can do with our money. I would love to know, what are some of the fun things you love to do with your money? What brings you joy with your capital?
I think for us, we love to do experiences with the kids, whether that's a trip. Something I've been doing for my kids' birthdays is I'll get them something really small. We do an experience. So we're going to go see the Circus Olay with my daughter for my daughter's birthday. We went to go see the Blue Man Group for my son's birthday. So I think experiences, creating memories. And my kids are young, 11 and 8. So I want to keep doing that. And we're taking them for spring break and actually doing a service project with them. They're not overly happy, to be honest with you, but they'll appreciate it when they're older. That's what I'm saying to myself. So they're like, we're not going to just go to the beach and hang out for 4 days. I'm like, no, we're going to an orphanage.
Sorry,
they're
guys.
like, that's not fun. But I'm like, that's how I was raised. We're going to go do service work and help people. It's what we do in this family. So I think that's really important is experiences. But when I want something nice, there's no problem doing it. We've really made some really cool improvements to our home. We have a beautiful outside where we've done some really cool landscaping and that kind of thing. Something that I can experience with other people, with myself, is where I like to put my money. That's typically where I like to do that.
I love that, Liz. And lastly, obviously you're doing so much for the world, for other people. What can we do for you? What do you need right now? What are you calling in? How can we support you?
I would say the biggest help that anyone could give is come to InvestorCon. Come to InvestorCon. If you're a woman seeking financial independence and creating wealth for yourself, I think real estate is considered still an alternative investment. I believe wholeheartedly, 20 years as a real estate investor, it's one of the best investments. And I just think the barrier to entry, people don't always know how to navigate. And people make it more complex than it is. So I would say invest in yourself, even in times that we're in, a little uncertainty out there. I get that. I know that. I feel that. But I do believe this is when you double down in investing in yourself, investing in your growth, and being around especially women, other women who are playing at the level you either want to play at or playing even beyond where you are at. That's how we grow. That's how we evolve if we want to live life and creating the life we want. So that would be the biggest thing, because we can only do events like this, right? As we have more people there, and we're doing fine. There's going to be a great group, but definitely getting the word out more, selling more tickets helps the speakers, helps the sponsors, and helps the women there to network with each other. So that would be my biggest ask, because women will not be disappointed.
Liz Faircloth, thank you so much for your spirit of generosity, your wisdom, everything you're up to on this planet. I'm grateful to have you as a friend. Thank you for being here today on Getting Rich Together.
Thank you so much for having me. It was so fun.
Thank you so much for tuning into this episode of Getting Rich Together. Please take a minute to subscribe. And if you like this episode, I'd love it if you could share it with a friend who is ready to elevate their financial future. Until next time, let's keep getting rich together.